Hey there, deep divers. You ready to dive into some seriously choppy economic waters?
Always up for a challenge.
Well, get ready to buckle up because today we're talking tariffs. The return of tariffs.
Uh-oh. Sounds ominous.
It is. And it could hit your wallet hard, especially if you're part of the middle class. We're talking about former President Trump's bombshell announcement to slap a 25% tariff on all goods from Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, that definitely sent shockwaves through the news cycle. Coming right after Thanksgiving, no less.
Right. Talk about a holiday hangover. So we've got a stack of articles here from Yahoo Autos, Newsweek, Invest.
All dissecting this potential economic earthquake.
Exactly. And we're going to break it all down for you. No jargon, no political spin, just the facts and what they could mean for you.
The timing is definitely interesting. Right after a holiday centered around gratitude and togetherness.
It's like someone spiked the eggnog with economic uncertainty. But before we get into the nitty-gritty...
Let's make sure everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. What are tariffs again? Like, in plain English.
Basically, they're taxes on goods coming into a country.
Okay, so, like, if a car part is made in Mexico and shipped here to the U.S. for assembly.
Boom. Hit with a 25% tariff.
And who ends up paying that?
You guessed it. The consumer. You and me.
So it's like a hidden tax that we end up paying without even realizing it.
Pretty much. And in this case, that hidden tax could add thousands of dollars to the price of a new car.
Thousands. Okay, now you're talking my language. Cars are a major purchase for most people, especially those of us in the middle class. How would these tariffs actually impact car prices?
Well, think of the North American auto industry as this big interconnected web.
With parts constantly crossing borders.
Right. Between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico throws a wrench in that whole system, making those parts way more expensive.
And those costs just get passed down the line.
Until they hit our wallets hard. Analysts at Wells Fargo are predicting some serious price hikes. American-assembled cars could go up over $2,000 on average.
$2,000. That's a lot. And what about cars made entirely in Mexico or Canada?
Oh, those could see increases between $8,000 and $11,000.
No way. That's not a pretty picture.
And here's a fun fact. Did you know 88% of pickup trucks from the top 3 U.S. automakers are actually imported from Mexico?
Seriously, that's a lot.
It is. We're talking Ford, General Motors, Stellantis.
All relying on Mexican imports for their trucks.
So under Trump's plan, the price of those all-American trucks could jump by about $3,000.
Ouch. This is starting to feel a bit familiar, isn't it?
Like a bad rerun. Didn't Trump try this tariff thing during his first term?
He did, and it caused major global disruptions. Sparked a trade war that left everyone bruised. So are we headed for round 2? Is the USA going into war? What are the experts saying?
Well, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum had some pretty strong words. She warned that one tariff will be followed by another and so on until we put joint ventures at risk.
Okay.
Meaning those partnerships between companies in different countries could crumble.
Leading to job losses on both sides of the border.
Exactly. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has already raised some red flags, warning these tariffs could really hurt American businesses and consumers.
And in Mexico, President Sheinbaum's economic minister estimated that tariffs could lead to the loss of around 400,000 jobs.
Wow.
400,000 jobs. This thing has the potential to spiral out of control pretty fast, leave a lot of economic wreckage in its wake. Speaking of wreckage, if this deep dive is even slightly stressing you out,
you might want to hit that subscribe button.
Just saying. You won't want to miss the next part of our analysis, trust me.
And it's not just the economic impact we need to worry about. There are bigger diplomatic concerns, too. President Biden weighed in, saying he hopes Trump rethinks it, called the tariffs counterproductive.
Yeah, he stressed the importance of maintaining strong relationships with Canada and Mexico.
He even talked about the interconnectedness of our nations, surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and 2 allies, Mexico and Canada.
It's like we're deliberately trying to alienate our closest allies, the very countries we rely on for trade and cooperation.
Exactly. This whole move seems to contradict that reality.
So we've established tariffs are a pretty blunt instrument, maybe even a sledgehammer approach that could do more harm than good.
A very large, very expensive sledgehammer.
Right. But if tariffs aren't the answer to these complex issues, fentanyl trafficking, illegal immigration, what are the alternatives? What other options are even on the table?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And one that deserves a much deeper exploration. Some experts are suggesting a more multi-pronged approach.
Like what?
Well, things like strengthening law enforcement, investing in prevention and treatment programs, addressing the root causes of migration.
So getting smarter about how we tackle these challenges instead of resorting to these sweeping, potentially disastrous tariffs.
Exactly, taking a more holistic view. Considering the long-term consequences of our actions, working collaboratively with our partners.
To find solutions that actually benefit everyone involved. Okay, that sounds a whole lot more sensible than this whole tariff chaos. But let's be honest, sometimes the world doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's unpack those alternative approaches in more detail and see if they hold any real promise. Stay with us, folks, because this deep dive is about to get even more interesting. Welcome back to this deep dive. Before we went down this tariff rabbit hole, we were talking about how effective tariffs are as a solution to issues like fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree.
Very.
We also touched on some alternative strategies that actually make sense.
Like strengthening law enforcement, investing in prevention and treatment programs, addressing the root causes of migration.
Right. But let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the potential economic fallout if these tariffs actually go into effect.
Okay, buckle up, because things are about to get expensive.
Expensive for everyone.
For everyone,
Yeah.
but especially for the middle class.
Hit me with the hard numbers. What kind of impact are we looking at here? According to a recent article in Newsweek, these tariffs could cost American consumers an estimated $78 billion annually.
$78 billion. That's a lot of money.
It is. And that cost would be passed down to all of us.
In the form of...
Higher prices.
Yeah.
For a wide range of everyday goods. Pretty much everything.
So it's not just about cars getting more expensive.
Nope. It's about everything getting more expensive. Groceries, clothes, electronics.
Everything we need to survive and, actually enjoy life.
All of it. Think about all the things we buy from Canada and Mexico. Food, clothes, building materials.
The list goes on and on.
It does.
Hold on, let's back up a second. We talked about how car prices could skyrocket, but what about the broader auto industry? What happens if Canadian-made cars suddenly become 25% more expensive?
Well, American consumers are either going to have to pay more or buy fewer cars.
And if they buy fewer cars?
That could lead to a slowdown in the auto industry, job losses, economic instability.
So not only are we talking about higher prices, we're also talking about people losing their jobs.
It's not a good situation.
And it's not just the auto industry, right? What about agriculture? What happens to our grocery bills if these tariffs go into effect?
Well, Canada and Mexico are major suppliers of agricultural goods to the U.S. Fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy products.
So all that stuff could become way more expensive.
It could. And think about the impact on farmers and ranchers in the U.S. If Canadian and Mexican products become less competitive.
It could create a surplus of American-grown goods.
Right, leading to lower prices for farmers, potentially putting some out of business.
So not only do consumers get hit with higher prices, but American farmers could actually end up worse off.
It's a domino effect. One policy change triggers a chain reaction.
And the middle class gets caught in the middle. This is getting scary. We're talking about higher prices, job losses, economic instability. If you're not already feeling a sense of dread, you should be. And if you're finding this information even remotely helpful,
Hit that subscribe button.
you won't want to miss the rest of our analysis. And don't forget, we have 2 more videos on this topic over on our channel, The Digital Podcast.
We'll go even deeper there.
Okay, so we've established that these tariffs have the potential to really mess things up economically. But it's not just about the numbers, is it? There's a human cost to all of this, too.
Absolutely. And that human cost is often overlooked. Let's put a face on this issue. Imagine a single mother working 2 jobs, trying to make ends meet. She's already struggling. And now she's facing even higher prices for everything. Groceries, gas, school supplies.
It's hard to even think about.
And it's not just single mothers. It's seniors on fixed incomes, working families, young people trying to start their careers. Everyone in the middle class is vulnerable.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to shed light on the potential consequences of these policies.
To empower people with the information they need to make informed decisions.
It's a bleak picture, but it's a picture we need to confront. And it's not enough to just sit back and complain. We need to take action, make our voices heard, demand better from our leaders.
And one way to take action is to stay informed, to engage in these discussions, to challenge the status quo.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential economic fallout, the human cost, and the need for action. But what about the bigger picture? Could these tariffs escalate into a full-blown trade war?
It's definitely a possibility, and one with potentially catastrophic consequences. Remember what President Scheinbaum said about one tariff leading to another? That kind of retaliation could spiral out of control.
And what would a trade war look like in practice? What would be the consequences for everyday people?
Well, a trade war would essentially mean a series of escalating tariffs and other protectionist measures between the US, Canada, and Mexico. This could lead to even higher prices for consumers, reduced trade, economic instability, and potentially even diplomatic tensions.
Not a pretty picture. And all because of a policy that many experts believe won't even be effective.
It's like trying to cure a headache by banging your head against a wall.
Ouch. That's a vivid analogy.
It highlights the importance of careful consideration, thoughtful debate, a nuanced understanding of the global economy.
We need to think about the long-term consequences of our actions.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
And it's not just about economics. It's about our values, our priorities, the kind of future we want to create.
And we're not done yet. When we come back for the final part of this episode, we'll explore the historical context of tariffs, examine the arguments for and against their use, consider the role of Congress in shaping trade policy. Stay tuned, because this conversation is far from over.
Welcome back, deep divers. We've been wading through some pretty murky economic waters here, exploring the potential fallout from these proposed tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and honestly, it's a lot to process.
It is. But remember, knowledge is power. Understanding the history, understanding the arguments surrounding tariffs, that's how we equip ourselves to make informed decisions, maybe even influence the course of events.
Okay, I'm ready to face the music. Let's dive into the historical context of tariffs. Hit me with the Spark Notes version.
All right, well, tariffs, they're not exactly a new invention. They've been around for centuries. Governments have used them throughout history as a way to raise revenue, protect domestic industries, even exert their influence on trade relationships.
So this isn't just some, harebrained scheme cooked up by a few politicians.
Not exactly. It's an ancient tool in the global economic toolbox, often wielded with mixed results.
So this strategy has been tried and tested before, maybe even failed miserably.
You got it. In fact, tariffs played a big role in shaping the early American economy. Remember Alexander Hamilton?
The $10 bill guy?
That's the one. He was a big advocate for tariffs, saw them as a way to promote American manufacturing, reduce our dependence on foreign goods.
Interesting. So tariffs were once seen as a way to build up American industry, make us less reliant on those pesky foreigners. It's kind of ironic considering how interconnected the global economy is today.
Right. It shows how times have changed, how economic strategies that might have worked in the past don't always translate to the modern world. But that protectionist sentiment, the idea that we need to shield our industries from foreign competition, it's a recurring theme throughout American history, especially during times of economic uncertainty.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Yeah.
Are there any historical examples that really stand out, like cautionary tales about the dangers of tariffs?
There's one that sends chills down the spines of economists everywhere. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930.
Smoot-Hawley, that doesn't sound good.
It wasn't. It was like a greatest hits compilation of all the worst ideas in trade policy, slap hefty tariffs on a wide range of imported goods, and it's widely considered to have made the Great Depression even worse.
So they tried to protect American businesses and ended up hurting everyone.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Raising prices for consumers, disrupting international trade. It was a classic example of protectionism backfiring.
Okay, so history seems to suggest that tariffs can be a bit of a gamble, like playing economic roulette with the livelihoods of millions of people.
That's one way to put it. It highlights the importance of really weighing the potential costs and benefits before making these big policy changes. We need to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Right. Like that other saying, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. But enough about the past. Let's talk about the here and now. What are the arguments for and against using tariffs today? Because I'm guessing there are still some folks out there who think they're a good idea.
There are, and they make some valid points. Some people argue that tariffs can help level the playing field, making foreign goods more expensive and giving American businesses a competitive edge.
Yeah, but haven't we seen how that can backfire? Higher prices for consumers, retaliation from other countries. It's like trying to win a race by tripping your opponents, but then you fall flat on your face too.
Exactly, and that's what makes this debate so complex. There are valid arguments on both sides. It's not about saying tariffs are good or bad. It's about understanding the nuances, The trade-offs, the
Hmm.
potential consequences.
So where do we go from here? What role should Congress play in all of this? Can they do anything to, stop this economic train wreck before it's too late?
Well, that's a great question, and it highlights how important checks and balances are in our government. Congress has the power to approve or reject trade agreements. They can also pass legislation that limits the president's authority to impose tariffs,
So they could act as a kind of safety net.
potentially. It's too early to say how this will all play out, but Congress has a crucial role to play in shaping trade policy. Their actions or inaction could have a big impact on the future of the American economy.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's not just about economics, It's about politics, history, international relations, the kind of world we want to live in, the choices we make, the consequences we face.
And the power we have to shape the future.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, folks. We've covered a lot of ground, but we've only scratched the surface of this issue. It's complex, it's constantly evolving, but it's important. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. Your voice matters. Your actions can make a difference. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into, well, whatever's making headlines then. Until then, keep those minds sharp and those conversations flowing.